Hello everyone, Lisa Savaniak here from lifelikeyoumeanit.com, and I'm coming to you live today to talk about another NLP strategy to change your life, which is the whole idea that the person who has the most flexible behavior will control their outcome. So if you've been watching my videos, you know I've actually talked about this before, and that's because it's actually quite important. Right? There's a few aspects of this that we need to understand in order to grasp this whole concept, this whole strategy within NLP. So first and foremost, the idea that you are in control of your own behavior and that your behavior can be flexible, what those things actually mean, and then what controlling the outcome actually looks like. So you can't control other people, right? You have absolutely no control over the decisions that the people around you make, how they view their world, right? How they even interpret what you do and what you say. Right? So you have no control over those things, but you do have control over yourself in that regard, right? You get to control what you think, what you say to yourself, what you focus on, what your reactions and actions are going to be. You get to choose how you are going to perceive your environment and what other people in your environment are doing and saying, right? You get to choose that. You also get to choose whether or not you are aware of this type of depth of what's going on within you, right? Because for you to be able to really understand and pay attention to what you're saying to yourself and you're saying to others and what you're saying about yourself to others and all of that kind of stuff that we're talking about means that you've got to have quite a strong level of awareness, right? And that's something that can be developed over time and is actually a lot easier than what it sounds. Right? A lot of people just, they start off and they don't have any clue over the fact that they actually have control over these things. They don't really know what they're thinking or what they're doing or why they're acting that way. But as soon as you start to actually consciously think about it and become a little bit aware and recognize, okay, so I've gotten angry. Let me just stop and think about that and, what triggered that? What am I getting out of being angry? Right? What does that serve for me? How has that come out in the way that I have acted towards others and towards myself? What did I get from that? Etc. Right? And so just starting to ask yourself a few questions actually raises the awareness tenfold. Right? And as soon as that awareness is prompted, it actually starts to spiral and take on a life of its own. It's actually quite easy then to actually become even more aware of what it is that you're doing. So the same is true with the awareness of the level of control that you have over these things. And of course, there's going to be people in your life that are going to do and say things that you are not expecting, that are maybe not pleasant, maybe even downright mean, right? I mean, again, we can't control them. And it's also possible that some of the things that we perceive as being mean or not being nice, or whatever the case may be, is actually just the way that we are perceiving what they are doing and saying because of our own past experiences, that their intention is not to be mean or not nice, but that is how we are perceiving the circumstances around us because of what's gone on in our day that day, or maybe even much farther back in our past. So it's important for us to really be able to recognize these types of things and realize that, yeah, sometimes we're going to be thrown for a loop. Sometimes somebody's going to say something or do something that is going to trigger us in some way, whether that triggers us to be really happy and be laughing and joyful, or it triggers us to be really sad and crying, or to be really angry and yelling, or whatever it is. That when we say triggered, right? Triggered doesn't always have to be a negative thing. It can trigger us into a different state of mind. And so awareness is the first part of this whole idea that if you have a flexible behavior, then you are able to control the outcome. And flexible behavior is really only possible when you have awareness. So when you realize that you are behaving in a certain way, and whether that's internally, so what you're saying and doing to yourself, or what you're saying or doing to somebody else, right? How you are projecting that emotion or whatever it is, that state of mind that you have right in that moment, right? However that is coming out. And it may not be something, as grand as you've yelled at somebody and hurt their feelings or something like that. It could be coming out in things like distracting yourself in your business and allowing yourself to be distracted by the next shiny thing and thinking that you have to actually learn this big complicated tech thing before you can actually launch your product or something along those lines, and really sitting back and stopping and asking yourself, what am I really doing here? Sure, there's an element of, I need to be able to have everything on the back end working perfectly before I can launch this, because I want it to be seamless. I want to be able to capture people's details and I want them to have a lovely experience. But there is, most times, part of that is that whole feeling of being out of control and being at risk, right? For people to reject what you are offering and you to experience your version of failure, right? And so you basically are postponing that by distracting yourself by doing something else. So when I talk about our actions and reactions towards ourselves and other people, we don't necessarily have to be talking about big bursts of anger and things like that, although that also is featured in here. But even these small little behaviors that we have, these little things that we don't even notice are behaviors. And that's why I say that awareness is the key. When you can actually stop, recognize, I'm doing something here. Let me just do a little self-reflection and see what's driving this show, right? Why I'm actually doing, what I'm getting out of doing that. And then you can actually stop and say, is there a better way to meet this need? Right? If the need is for you to feel safe so that you are not, thrown to the wolves, so to speak, and you're not getting rejection, if that's what the distraction is all about, is there another way for you to feel confident that you're not going to be rejected, or feel confident in your ability to handle any possible rejection? Is it possible that you need to just kind of flip that switch around a little bit, and instead of looking at that as perceived failure, as seeing as a possibility to grow and learn, right? If somebody gives you feedback, they didn't like something that you put out, is that really a failure, or is that an opportunity for you to actually take a closer look through a different set of eyes at what you're offering and see if you need to tweak things, right? And so it's potentially opportunity. And so when you actually sit back and ask yourself that, and you start to realize, okay, actually there's a few shifts that I need to do just to gain some confidence in my ability to handle this. Or maybe it's a full-on tweak of something altogether, right? Realizing that you're so stressed out in this moment, you're so anxious because you're trying to control the uncontrollable. You're trying to control somebody else. And so just taking that step back and realizing, well, I actually don't have the power to control somebody else. I do have the power to control me. So let me look at what I'm doing with this information and how I can shift that. So that is what flexible behavior is really all about, is being able to have the awareness to figure out what it is that you're doing, why you're doing it, and then see if you can do something different that is more serving for your higher good and get the same results, right? And that controls the outcome. And again, that word control is a little bit misleading, makes it sound like you can control somebody else, right? Whether somebody's going to purchase your product or whether you're going to get that job promotion or whatnot. And of course, that's not what I mean. But what we do mean when we say something like that is that the outcome then is something that you are going to be able to kind of strategically maneuver around, because regardless of what the outcome ends up being, even if it's something that you weren't anticipating and weren't hoping for, that you will actually be much more flexible in how you look at that and what you do with that. So again, looking at the perceived failure instead as an opportunity, right? And what can I take from this? How can I tweak this? How can I come back at this from a different angle and get what it is that I was hoping for? So I hope that that makes sense, right? Those people that have the most flexible behavior will control the outcome. And that all comes down to awareness of what you're doing and why you're doing it, and figuring out if there's a different way to meet that same need. There's the flexibility in the behavior there, and that automatically adjusts the way that you can handle that outcome. So I hope that that helps. I would love for you to jump on in and get a free discovery call with me so that we can find out more about you and what you're going through specifically, and you can find out exactly how NLP can change your life. So for that, you just need to go to lifelikeyoumeanit.com/calendar to access that free call with me. Bless.